in connection with buses, which started way back in 1908 when Vanguard were considering putting petrol engines into horse buses.
And here's our new bus, the Routemaster. Independent coil springing, wheels slung from the body, no chassis. It's really something.
We didn't sit down and dream up a new bus. It was a continuous process. So gradually we found out what was good, what was bad, and if it offered an advantage to us, we incorporated it. First of all, we had to consider the drivers, that they had to be able to drive them after being on trams and trolley buses. And the passenger situation was of importance. It had to be an attractive piece of street furniture, pleasing to the eye. We were fighting the private car. It had to have a bright interior. It had to be comfortable to ride in. So we changed to the idea of an integral vehicle, not with a body on a chassis as we had on the RT and as we have today, unfortunately, but it was an integral structure without the conventional chassis frame, a chassis that we knew. So we had to consider maintenance both for the overhaul programme and also the daily garage maintenance. The requirement was that any job that needed to be done in the garage could be done within the space of a day. That is, engine change, gearbox change and so on. Also, we had to consider accidents, and we produced diagrams showing which panels became damaged more frequently, and they were made simple to change. In some cases already painted. The holes were drilled because we went to jig production with the experience we gained in building aircraft during the last war. So we then really assembled a bus, we didn't build a bus. The actual road tests were done at Chobham, the Fighting Vehicle Research Establishment, purely because of the link that we had during the wartime days.
This man, whose watching eyes have been the symbol of all our researches, is travelling now in a bus. In place of passengers and tickets, ride gauges and recording instruments. The gauges, attached to various parts of the bodywork, measure the strains imposed when the bus goes over bumps or curves steeply in turning corners. Joyriding on the top deck sits the ballast. In turns that would fling passengers giddily from side to side of the bus, the strains and stresses are dispassionately recorded. The turns themselves are measured on this special meter, and the driver can be told for certain whether he makes them as tight as possible. The electronic tubes are connected to a camera, and their readings are filmed. Here, in our fourth back room, the film is closely analysed. This piece reveals the strain on one of the lighter parts of the body. The facts and figures inferred from it are duly noted. And here, one of the heavier sections of bodywork yields its secrets of stress. The columns of figures grow longer and will in their turn be embodied in graphs. From these, the engineers can judge whether the basic design must be modified. When the design has been approved, the bus is tested again, this time for 6 weeks at full speed, 200 miles a day over a special proving ground. Bumps and bends are there in abundance. And if in all conditions the bus behaves itself according to plan, it will at last be judged thoroughly fit for public service in London. The revolutionary design of the Routemaster ensures that it is not only safer and easier to drive than the older buses, but also more comfortable to ride in.
And the beauty of it was that we had sole control of the ground whilst we were carrying out the tests. So we didn't have to worry about traffic interfering. As a method of control, we had a Green Line coach based there, and there was a controller in there who was dictating over the radio what tests and what to do next, sort of thing, on the circuit, from braking, cornering, accelerating, all those sort of things. And we were able to carry out strain gauge tests to prove that the requirements had been met that were laid down, the maximum stress permitted in the bus. We were working with other organisations such as Lockheed, power braking system as used on aircraft, and we did suspension work because it had independent suspension to give a reasonable ride. This was quite a headache at the start because we found that cart springs or leaf springs, as used on buses, contributed an awful lot to the suspension. And I'm afraid we slipped up on our calculations in as much that we didn't set the shock absorbers high enough, and we were forced when we were carrying out ride tests that the bus did tend to bounce rather a lot, and we had to double the loads inside the shock absorber. Unfortunately, this broke the shock absorber, and they had to redesign the thing. Instead of making the valves of Mazak material, they had to be military specifications with steel for the foot valves, etc. But this is what you learn by quiet development behind the scenes before you go into production. One of the other tests that we carried out, having completed the Chobham tests, was route testing. We had selected routes that were considered to represent the various types in operation in the whole of the London transport area. That included country area, of course. And we used the 6s, the 11s, the 65s, and some Green Line routes, as well as country bus routes. This gave us a whole picture of the various things that happened to London buses, because at that time we had more or less a standard bus to cover, or standard type to cover the whole of the fleet. We were able to instrument the bus with lots of instruments to do it automatically, but on revolving parts you had to sometimes do specific checks. Well, you can't fit thermocouples on a revolving brake drum, and with the cooperation of the driver, he would stop somewhere for 2 or 3 minutes while we nipped round the bus and took the temperatures and so on. The only test we hadn't done was a serious impact test, and we were talking, so who's going to volunteer to drive it at a brick wall, but if you wait long enough, it happens, and it did. We had a serious accident in the Edgware Road, where a sand and gravel lorry thought he had the right of way, and he went straight into the bus went straight into the lorry, who cut across in front of him, and the damage, or the force of the impact was that a passenger went over 3 seats and hit the bulkhead of the bus and only produced a dent. I don't know what it did to him, but still. And it proved our point that there was slight distortion of the bus, but we were able to repair it quite easily, and the sand and gravel lorry was a complete write-off. When we had Sir John Elliott as the chairman, he brought out this advert on the side of the bus: "This is the bus of the future, write and tell us what you think." Well, that's the last thing you want in developing buses. The first public appearance was at the Horse Guards Parade, which celebrated the centenary of the London General Omnibus Company, and a whole selection of various vehicle types coming from the museum, people with costumes, and the end of the procession was brought up by RM1, which by this stage had now been accepted and tested as the next bus for the future. When it came to overhauling the RMs, we started at the 4 years, but we didn't strip everything out. We looked, checked them, and we found that many of the things were virtually as good as new and were still within tolerances. And the decision was taken to extend the overhaul life to 7 years. Garages would change engines when they became sick. We believed in changing them before they failed. Unfortunately today now buses don't get overhauled anymore. They're dealt with at garages or they're sent outside, and I can't comment on present standards.
Contributed to the design of the final ultimate London bus, the Routemaster. The London Bus Federation Trust T31, another petrol engine AEC Regal. Actually the first privately preserved vehicle in preservation. first appeared at the Commercial Motor Show in 1954 and caused quite an outstanding impression. London's bus of the future. One of only two Routemasters not to be refurbished in the early 1990s. The ultimate is of course FRM1, now cared for by London's Transport Museum. The vehicle is now descending upon us, and I said to you earlier on, 70% of the building material which go to make up the FRM are standard to the ordinary standard rear entrance Routemaster. So it's quite an accomplishment. Obviously we've got the rear engined and the front entrance, which made it much more compatible with modern day operation in London, i.e. non-crew operation. Notable arrival, by the way, parking alongside Cobham's RML3, is RMD4, and the other Leyland Routemaster from the prototype 4. Still fitting to the Leyland is RMD4, originally known as CRL4, was the prototype green light coach, and it was the longest survivor in passenger service of all the prototype Routemasters. Please bear with us, ladies and gentlemen.
automatically become the technical number 2 here. I mean, this is when you say a party individual, then that's
Everybody enjoys riding on Routemasters, come on. Yes, that's what you're about, like on the buses.
Carry on, driver.